Hey guys, it's Adam from the Rescue Michigan Coalition, and sorry for the strange getup, but I just got back from Lansing from testifying at the hearing of Lucas Gerhard, and I just wanted to provide a quick debrief about what happened at the hearing. Short story is it went great. And actually, by the way, before we get into that hearing, I also wanted to point out that the House Reg Reform Committee, which is the mostly the alcohol cartel committee, essentially, for what they usually do, but they're the committee that was also considering the Pot Cartel Act. That bill did not get a hearing today at all, and that's a positive development. We've talked about this, and again, whether you have the libertarian view on marijuana or the traditional conservative view, nobody wants there to be a powerful, enduring pot cartel in Lansing, and the bill not getting a hearing shows that the inertia behind this really ground to a halt almost immediately, because this is something they've been working on for months and months and months. Hey, Rachel in the chat, thank you for saying hello. Glad to be with you. This is an unannounced stream, so thanks everyone for tuning in if you're here. But I just want to really talk about the hearing with Lucas Gerhard that came up in the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee today. It was outstanding. There was no real opposition to the bill whatsoever. The only complaints that people had, and they were fair, is that maybe the language has to be even tightened up more to make it even more clear what is not to be considered a threat. So I can't play the whole video, but there is a link in the description if you want to watch it. It was a 1-hour hearing. The first 14 minutes were on unrelated business, so it was really about 45 minutes. But Mark Gerhard, Lucas's father, told the story about what had happened to Lucas. And then his attorneys came up and they kind of laid out the legal issues and explained what's been going on at the Court of Appeals, and at the circuit court level, about why so many things were not proper about what's been happening to him. And then we also had a rock star witness, what's her name? Nancy Costello, who was the director of the First Amendment Law Clinic at Michigan State University. I think one of the only First Amendment law clinics in the country, maybe the only one. And she talked about Lucas's case and why she submitted a lengthy expert testimony about why this case should be dismissed. And she too had concerns about some of the specifics in the bill, but the point is these are all going to be ironed out. The more important thing is the case drew attention to what's been going on to Lucas, and how unjust it truly is. And hopefully encourages the Supreme Court in the state of Michigan to take up the case. That's really the biggest thing. Although obviously we do want to see this bill passed into law, signed into law, because if the Supreme Court doesn't do the right thing, then it is a free-for-all. Under the Michigan Court of Appeals' published decision, effectively, if someone interprets what you say to be a threat, no matter how ridiculous, how bizarre that interpretation would have to be, you could be hauled before a court, charged with a 20-year felony of being a terrorist, and perhaps lose even just 2 years of your life waiting to go to trial. And that's what's happened to Lucas Gerhard. We had probably one or two dozen people come to Lansing just to be there to support Lucas. And that was wonderful. The questions that the representatives asked were all helpful, all informative. It went really well. I did get to testify briefly. It was already at the 1-hour mark, and we figured that was going to be the deadline to end the committee meeting. They ended up going just a few minutes over, so I got to just kind of summarize things. I could probably play that clip for you. Otherwise, there's other clips that are definitely worth seeing. But I just don't know if I'm going to be able to find them for you without basically just going through the entire 1-hour video. So in the description for this video, there is the link to the Michigan House TV archive of the hearing where you can watch the whole thing from start to finish. A lot of great points were made by, number one, Mark Gerhard himself, Lucas's father, also Lucas's attorneys, also Nancy Costello. Also, there's another gentleman who he testified, he put in a card in opposition to the bill, and we had no idea what angle he was going with. And his angle actually was the bill should be even more robust in protecting free speech. So that was nice. we'd heard before the hearing that the ACLU was planning to oppose it, and we were kind of speculating as to why. And our first concern was maybe they've just totally given up on civil liberties altogether. Obviously the ACLU these days is mostly all about illegal immigration and abortion and gun control, and we figured maybe they're going to be opposed even to this free speech case on the basis that it involves guns. But it might actually be their opposition is just based on the same thing this other gentleman was saying, which is that their free speech protections in the bill need to be even more robust. And that's a great thing. So we're looking forward to finding that out. In fact, the chair even tipped his hat that we're going to be talking to the ACLU and seeing what they think needs to be done to fix the bill. And it might be very productive. It might be that we get them on board and have an even stronger First Amendment protection, and it becomes a totally bipartisan thing that sails through both chambers and gets signed into law. And Lucas's attorneys even said, yeah, if this becomes law, this could and should affect his case, which would be outstanding. Or conversely, possibly the ACLU just has objections because of it being a gun issue. It doesn't seem likely, but if that's what happens, then that'll be a telling tale about the ACLU. So I guess we'll see. Anyway, I'll play my very short clip. I was only there for like 2 minutes because we were already at the end of the hearing and we couldn't go any further. The way it worked was that first Representative Riley introduced the bill, and then he introduced Mark Gerhard, his constituent, the father of Lucas Gerhard, and just kind of laid out the whole story. Then Lucas's attorneys got into the legal stuff, and then Nancy Costello from the First Amendment Clinic at MSU really came at it from, because she is very clearly a liberal, but the liberals that support free speech, and her voice was very helpful to have there too. So again, I really encourage everybody to watch the whole hearing. I am playing my testimony not because I just want to promote Rescue Michigan and point out how relevant we were. That's not it. It's just that it's only 2 minutes and it's not very much, and I think encapsulates some of the essence of what we were going for here. We were really not trying to be partisan. We're really trying to avoid partisanship. I mean, frankly, we have every reason to think the Republicans will be on board with this easily, but we're not just trying to make a political statement. We want this thing to actually be passed, and that involves getting the Democrats on board. So we didn't talk about, things like how the second impeachment of Donald Trump, the sham impeachment, was undermining the First Amendment for everybody and people like Lucas, because that might have inflamed their partisan inclinations. We were going away from that direction. So anyway, with that in mind, here's what I said.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. From Rescue Michigan Coalition?
That's correct. I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. I know we're just about out of time here, but just wanted to sum something up here. We've had a lot of discussion about the details of First Amendment law and the verbiage of the bill and how important every single word is to the meaning and how it's applied. This is why juries are not the people to interpret First Amendment analysis. This is why First Amendment law is case law that goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. These are complex legal issues that judges are supposed to interpret. And what's happened in the case of Lucas Gerhard and now at the State Court of Appeals is that they've said effectively that if someone feels threatened subjectively by anything you say, you can be hauled before a court, you can face terrorism charges, you can have your life destroyed. This is a very dangerous precedent that's going to affect all Michigan citizens. And I would make this point.
All right, I'm about to transition to a different point here, so I want to elaborate on what I was getting at there. What the Michigan Court of Appeals effectively said was that the question of whether or not you've threatened somebody is not a question for a judge, it's a question for a jury. And the problem with that is that juries are not First Amendment experts. And the problem with that is that in a criminal case, the way it's supposed to go is that the judge decides the law and the jury decides the facts. And for example, if so-and-so says, he raped me, and the other person says, no, I didn't, this is a question for a jury, a finder of fact. That's where a jury comes in. Jurors are not supposed to be interpreting the law. And I can hear people already saying, oh, well, what about jury nullification and jurors can interpret the law? No, jurors can find somebody not guilty on the basis of they don't think the law is just, and this is a big thing in a lot of trials relating to slavery, where jurors would not convict slaves for running away and things like that, where they said, no matter what the law says, we're not going to convict this person. And fundamentally, that is a juror's right to do, but that right stems from the fact that a juror can vote one way or the other according to their conscience for any reason, and they don't have to give a reason. Jurors don't get interrogated as to why they find someone guilty or not guilty. Jury nullification is something that jurors can do, but it's not found in the Constitution. It's something that they can do if they know they can do it. But in issues like this, when we're talking about the First Amendment, and let me give you an example of this, because I still hear people say, no, but jurors can nullify. Well, they can nullify in favor of a defendant. They're not supposed to be able to do it the other way around. For example, one of the cases that has been cited extensively in both Lucas's attorneys and the prosecuting attorney's paperwork is People v. Osentowski. And Osentowski was charged under Michigan's anti-terrorism law. He was ultimately sentenced to more than 20 years in prison. He was a high school student, and he was communicating to a female student. He was socially ostracized. He had all kinds of personal problems, and he was talking to her about all kinds of things, saying like, oh, I'm going to be famous because I got all these guns around the house, and I'm going to, he was saying things that suggest he was going to shoot up the school effectively. Now, the question wasn't a question of fact. The question was, did those rise to the level of being a true threat? And the jury found him guilty, sentenced him to more than 20 years in prison, where I assume he still is to this day. The problem is, it wasn't a question of fact, it was a question of law. Was his speech protected by the First Amendment? And if the judge says it's up for the jury to decide, it's up for the jury to decide. Unless you can appeal it, and unless your appeal is taken up, that's the end of it. Now, did the jury reach the right decision or not? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a First Amendment scholar. And that's the kind of question that is supposed to be resolved by an experienced jurist who understands First Amendment law in a sophisticated manner to understand how exactly the facts of that particular case could be applied. And does this comport with Supreme Court case law on what the First Amendment protects or what it doesn't? That's why the judges have to decide this, and maybe the appeals judges. It's a First Amendment analysis. It's a true threat analysis. But when you are dealing with the public, the ordinary people who are given the facts, people tend to go by emotions. They tend to go by, well, are we going to prevent this guy from shooting up his school or won't we? And that's why it's so important that these cases have a First Amendment analysis properly applied by someone that understands it. What the Michigan Court of Appeals said instead was whether or not Lucas's statement was a true threat, unless you can absolutely prove it wasn't, has to go to a jury. In other words, the standard was the impossibility of his guilt. That's what the Court of Appeals said. So if you say something and someone else interprets what you say as a threat, and they have a prosecutor like Lucas Gerhard's prosecutor, they can haul you into court on criminal charges, terrorism charges, 20-year felony charges, and take you all the way through the trial, unless you plead out or whatever else happens. In Lucas's case, he's appealing as far up as he can go. Right now, he's at the state Supreme Court level. We'll see if they take up the case or not. But that's the point I was getting at here, is that questions about First Amendment law are questions for judges. They're not questions for juries.
Point. We are in extremely tense political times right now, like we had never seen before. The weaponization of the justice system is something that neither side should have access to. In the era of free speech, when the ACLU defended the First Amendment, it actually intentionally sought out the most controversial cases. That's why the Brandenburg decision involved a Klansman who had exhorted people to storm Washington and to invade Congress. And the ACLU defended Brandenburg, this Klansman, with a Jewish attorney because they wanted the most controversial, difficult cases to establish the most robust defense of free speech. And that Supreme Court case had no dissent. It was resolved in the favor of his free speech because that's how important these protections are. Because our country needs to lower its temperature. And the weaponization of the justice system based on perceived offense and perceived threats is not the right standard. The right standard is the objective threat by the person making it with intention. This is a common sense issue that you can't accidentally threaten somebody. But this is the standard that's been applied and that has had this young man's life destroyed. So thank you for this for the opportunity to testify today, and happy to answer any questions.
And there were no more questions, so that is it. And again, I encourage you guys to watch the entire hearing from start to finish. I really didn't put myself in the spotlight there, except for the fact that it was a short point that I could play in 2 minutes, because that's all there was. You'll notice, by the way, I cited the ACLU, and I said, when the ACLU defended free speech, and maybe that was prepping for their opposition to the bill on grounds that might not have been fair. But whatever, the ACLU can defend its own reputation. They've fallen a long way in the last few years, so there's that. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't play too negatively to them. Hopefully they care more about the principle than the politics. But whatever. The important thing there, and again, the reason why I took that angle rather than really going hard partisan, I could have brought in a poster of Lauren Bonds, Lucas's accuser, herself posing with a shotgun, making the point about the shoe being on the other foot. But the fact is, if we're going to actually see this bill signed into law, and that has to be your intention, you have to want that if you're going to be pursuing legislation. I can't just say we're pursuing legislation to draw attention to Lucas's case and help his legal defense fund raise money. I mean, those are worthwhile objectives, but those can't be the primary objectives. If you're introducing legislation, you have to want to pursue it all the way to the end, to becoming the law of the land. And that would involve getting the Democrats on board. There's no question the Republicans see this exactly for what it is and are going to support it. The question is, can we help the Democrats overcome their partisan bias to understand why free speech is important for everybody? That's the challenge. So that's why we went about it that way. And overall, I would say it was a great hearing. We didn't get very many questions at all from the Democrats. One of them asked a couple of questions early on. Why is Lucas bringing a gun to campus at all? And that got shot down pretty well, because LSSU is a gun-friendly campus and students engage in shooting there all the time. Hunting, target practice. They have a criminal justice program. Lots of cops go through LSSU. So that got answered pretty well and fair. And I think we have a pretty good shot with at least most of the Democrats on the committee. There's 4 of them. One of them, Richard Steenland, is a cop or was a cop. One of them, Kevin Coleman, is, I think, really trying to style himself as a moderate. And then the other 2, I don't know much about them, honestly. The minority vice chair, what's her name? I think Rogers is her last name. Is I think a pretty big Biden supporter, so we don't know if we're going to get her on board or not. But I think ultimately what's going to be the test is, will we get the ACLU on board? And that's going to come down to just cleaning up the language. I hope that's all it takes. I hope the ACLU's opposition was just that the defense of free speech was not even more robust. So if we can get that, it's going to be great. If that's not what they're looking for, if they're just opposed to it because of who Lucas is and because guns are involved in the case, then we'll have a problem. But it'll be a good problem to have, because that would spotlight just how far the ACLU has fallen from their previous position of defending free speech in even the most aggravating circumstances. But I have a feeling it's not. I have a feeling it's the latter, the former, that the ACLU really actually is going to stand up for free speech on this. So we just need to get the policy right, and that's just going to involve some back and forth. Now that we have Nancy Costello from MSU, the First Amendment Law Clinic, engaged on this, I think it's going to be easy to develop really strong, robust language that all sides support. So overall, I think the hearing went absolutely great. The momentum is now with us. The attention on the case is elevated. The the language might yet be made even stronger and pass with bipartisan support. So I think it was a great day all around. A great day for Lucas Gerhard. A great day also for people that didn't like the pot cartel stuff, because they didn't get their bill voted out today, which is what they've been gunning for a long time. So overall, a great day in Lansing. So for everyone that showed up, first of all, thank you for coming. I know how much it means to Mark and Lucas to see people coming out to support them. And some people came in and actually sat down and testified, and the ones that didn't also were just there to emotionally support Mark and Lucas, and I think it went really well. So once again, thanks everybody for everything you've done for Mark and Lucas. And I should put Lucas's GoFundMe up one more time too, because who knows how much longer this is going to go on. I think we did good work today in elevating the issue, hopefully getting the Supreme Court to bring this in, perhaps even getting the prosecutor to give it up. But this is the address for Lucas Gerhard's GoFundMe. It's gofundme.com/f/ all lowercase here on out, 2B485-justice-for-Lucas. That was Lucas's dad calling me just there. I'll call him right back. But yep, he's raised $87,000. He has spent more than that on his legal defense already. And he will have to spend even more if it goes to trial. So if you can, please do support Lucas Gerhard. He has been under house arrest for 2 years. He's had that much of his life destroyed, which is hard to even fathom. So anyway, guys, just want to give you this report. It was a great day in Lansing. Things are going well. We're really pleased with the results. And once again, if you can help out Lucas, please do. And as always, thanks for all you guys do for liberty. Until next time, peace out.